At the Olkaria geothermal complex, inside Kenya's Hell's Gate National Park, engineers drilled thousands of meters directly into an active volcanic system, not as an experiment, but as vital national infrastructure. What emerged from those boreholes is superheated steam capable of driving industrial turbines. Today, those turbines generate roughly 40% of Kenya's total electricity supply. When severe droughts choke the nation's hydroelectric dams, subterranean heat remains unbothered. It does not fluctuate with seasonal weather. It is the raw, constant thermal energy of the Earth's interior, harnessed on demand. 300 kilometers north of those steam fields lies Lake Turkana, a body of water so intensely alkaline, its pH hovers between 9.2 and 9.4, placing its chemical profile closer to household ammonia than a freshwater lake. By standard biological logic, it should be a sterile waste ground. Yet it hosts an estimated 14,000 Nile crocodiles alongside human communities who have forged a livelihood on its shores for centuries. Both locations, the high-pressure power fields of Olkaria and the hyper-alkaline basin of Turkana, sit directly atop the exact same geological feature, a continental fracture known as the Great Rift Valley. By the end of this film, you will understand why a modern nation built its electrical grid, primary food hubs, and major cities on top of a subterranean engine that is actively trying to pull the continent apart. This is a forensic look at the ground beneath Kenya, and the ground has receipts. Look at a standard political map of Africa, and you are viewing a representation of reality that stops entirely at the surface. The borders mark legal jurisdiction, and the colors are visual decoration. What flat cartography conceals is structural force. It hides which regions rest on ancient, immovable cratons and which ones sit atop an active tectonic tear. It paints Kenya with a uniform stroke of a finished geometric shape, stable from corner to corner. It isn't. Beneath administrative lines lies a country whose landscape is governed by a singular structural fact. Kenya straddles one of the most dynamic sections of the East African Rift System. Two massive continental plates, the Nubian plate to the west and the Somali plate to the east, are diverging across this terrain at 6 to 7 millimeters per year. That rate sounds negligible, roughly the speed at which human fingernails grow. But geological forces do not operate on human schedules. Sustained over millions of years, that pulling force has thinned the Earth's crust, dropped valley floors, carved vertical escarpments, and elevated magma chambers dangerously close to the surface, beneath a developing economic core. Once that structural tear becomes visible, other geographic anomalies in Kenya cease to look random. Less than 12% of the nation's landmass can reliably support rain-fed agriculture for a population of 58 million people. Over 80% of the territory consists of arid and semi-arid scrub, desert, and ancient lava flows. Water bodies in the northern frontier possess chemical profiles closer to industrial solvents than drinking reserves. And the exact volcanic heat capable of triggering catastrophic hazards is currently keeping the lights on in Nairobi. This brings us to three fundamental questions standard travel guides skip. First, why did engineers deliberately plug a national power grid into live volcanic heat? Second, why is the vast majority of this country's soil agriculturally unproductive? And what occurs when the remaining green corridor experiences climatic shock? And third, how does complex biological life survive inside a lake environment chemically designed to destroy it? The answer to the last question connects directly to the first. Same fault line, different survival strategies. Stick with the map. We are going to peel back its layers. To understand any of these phenomena, you must analyze the Great Rift Valley, a 3,000-kilometer tear extending from the Afar Depression down through Kenya and Tanzania toward Mozambique. Kenya did not create the rift. It simply occupies an exceptionally active, visible, and economically decisive segment of it. Here is the physical mechanism. As the Somali and Nubian plates pull apart, the continental crust experiences continuous horizontal tension. Stretched crust thins out, and thinned crust sags under its own weight. The valley floor is not a peaceful valley carved by a river. It is a structural collapse bounded by steep basalt cliffs and faulted trenches where horizontal pulling caused vertical failure. When the crust thins, the pressurized mantle below rises to fill the void. Magma that would normally sit tens of kilometers deep pools just a few kilometers beneath the surface. This is why the region is an active volcanic province. It is why high-pressure steam fields, hot springs, and volcanic calderas cluster precisely along this central axis. As early geologist John Walter Gregory observed when first mapping the feature in 1896, the rift is a linear collapse where the Earth's crust has fallen in between parallel faults. This sequence, stretching, thinning, structural collapse, and shallow magma, is the master process behind almost every physical reality in Kenya. It shaped the power grid, the agricultural limits, the chemistry of the northern lakes, and even the evolutionary history of early human ancestors. If you think this geological force is limited to ancient history, wait until you see what happened when a single volcanic crater collapsed just north of Nairobi. The subterranean machine has produced catastrophic structural collapse here before. Roughly 8,000 years ago, a brief moment in Earth history, the volcanic shield complex near modern-day Nakuru underwent a violent eruptive sequence that ended in total collapse. What remains is the Menengai caldera, a massive volcanic depression measuring 12 kilometers across. Standing on its rim today provides physical evidence that thin crust and shallow magma are not abstract theories. Menengai represents both a geological hazard and an industrial opportunity. The physical conditions that create volcanic collapses are identical to those required for high enthalpy geothermal energy. If magma pools close enough to the surface to pose a volcanic risk, it also sits close enough to harvest, provided engineers can drill deep into the fractured rock, manage volatile mineral chemistry, and bet a national grid on heat that never relies on rainfall. What happens when a nation decides to plug its economic future directly into the most volatile geology under its feet? Kenya's answer to that question is Olkaria. Deep beneath the Rift Valley floor, groundwater filters through fractured volcanic rock, where it encounters shallow magmatic intrusions that heat it well above 300 degrees Celsius. At the Olkaria geothermal fields, south of Lake Naivasha, engineers drill deep wells to bring high-pressure steam to the surface, routing it straight into giant turbine halls. This is not a minor green energy experiment. Kenya's geothermal plants supply roughly 40% of the country's total electricity generation mix, placing it among the top global producers alongside Iceland and New Zealand. During extreme drought cycles, when river reservoirs dry up and hydroelectric dams drop offline, geothermal generation continues at full capacity. It provides consistent baseload energy generated from beneath the soil. Today, state energy producers are expanding this infrastructure into the Olkaria Green Energy Park, an industrial corridor built directly at the wellheads to utilize geothermal steam for manufacturing, zero-carbon data centers, and green hydrogen production. Yet, this infrastructure exists alongside real subterranean movement. Nairobi is not isolated from these dynamic subsurface forces. The capital expands across the eastern shoulder of the rift system, built on volcanic rock that remains seismically alive. In 2018, heavy rainfall combined with subsurface faulting and soil piping caused a massive ground fissure to tear across a major highway near Mai Mahiu, a stark visual reminder that cartographic lines sit atop shifting terrain. The geothermal complex is an engineering success, but it also reflects a compromise. The nation relies on a live fault line, the same volcanism that placed industrial steam within reach of drill rigs also created the narrow belt of fertile soil that feeds the nation. Which brings us to the critical metric missing from most political maps. Here is the central bottleneck of Kenyan food security. More than 80% of Kenya's landmass consists of arid or semi-arid terrain, scrubland, lava fields, and rugged terrain incapable of supporting high-yield, rain-fed agriculture. When those unproductive regions are set aside, the remaining arable land is remarkably limited. Roughly 11 to 12% of the total land area must produce food for 58 million people. Virtually the entire domestic food engine is concentrated within this single minority section of the map. This fertile sliver clusters in the high elevation zones surrounding Mount Kenya, the Aberdare Range, and the Mao Escarpment. These regions owe their productivity to the same volcanic engine that created Menengai. Millions of years of volcanic ash and basaltic lava weathered into deep, mineral-rich soils. Concurrently, high-altitude intercepts moisture-laden air masses coming off the Indian Ocean, converting elevation into a natural rainfall engine. When you compress rapid population growth, commercial export farming, and shifting climate patterns into a footprint no larger than a small US, state, the agricultural system, functions under continuous strain. The origin of this agricultural concentration stretches back to strategic land allocations executed over a century ago. When British colonial administrators surveyed East Africa in the early 20th century, identifying agricultural value required no complex technology. The elevation and volcanic soil were visually obvious. The fertile highland belt was formally designated as the White Highlands, a legal framework that reserved choice agricultural land for European settlement and export crops, while indigenous populations were relocated to marginal peripheral lands. This historical displacement was anchored directly to the local geology. Colonial authorities did not create the volcanic high-altitude fertility pocket. They mapped it, fenced it, and converted a geological resource into an exclusive property structure. The political struggles over land rights and the subsequent drive toward independence developed directly across these volcanic landscapes. Today, this narrow agricultural belt serves a complex double mandate. It operates as an export engine, shipping black tea, fresh produce, and flowers to international markets on tight logistics schedules. Simultaneously, it serves as the primary domestic food supply for a rapidly expanding national population. When seasonal rains fail, economic stress propagates immediately throughout the entire country. The Rift's agricultural bounty became a strategic bottleneck. Whoever controls this minority of arable land controls the core metabolic engine of the nation. 300 kilometers north, environmental constraints manifest in an entirely different manner. There, the challenge is not managing limited farmland within a highland belt. It is the total absence of agricultural land, replaced by a massive, chemically extreme lake. In the hyper-arid northern desert lies Lake Turkana, the largest permanent desert lake on Earth. Hydrologically, it is classified as an endorheic basin. Water flows into the lake, but no river flows out. The Omo River discharges substantial volumes of water from the Ethiopian highlands into this closed desert basin. Once the water enters, its only exit is evaporation, driven by intense desert heat that regularly exceeds 40 degrees Celsius. The basin acts as a terminal evaporative sink over millennia. Pure water evaporates into the atmosphere, while dissolved salts, volcanic minerals, and carbonates remain behind, steadily concentrating. This continuous evaporation turned Turkana into a chemical environment. Surface waters maintain an alkaline pH between 9.2 and 9.4. By standard freshwater metrics, it should be hostile to biological life. Yet it is far from empty. What ecological and evolutionary strategies allow life to dominate an environment that should chemically destroy it? Lake Turkana supports what historical surveys identify as the largest Nile crocodile population in Africa, once estimated at roughly 14,000 individuals. While environmental changes make that figure an informative baseline rather than a static daily count, the biological takeaway is clear. This alkaline basin is densely inhabited. Biologists have documented specific physical adaptations in Turkana's crocodiles, including distinct osteoderm scale patterns and altered body growth rates, adapted to the high salinity environment. Life did not retreat from the chemical conditions, it adapted to them. Alongside these apex reptiles live the El Molo people, one of Kenya's smallest indigenous communities, numbering around 1,400 individuals in recent census data. In an environment where traditional farming is impossible, their entire existence centers on deep knowledge of the lake's aquatic ecosystem. Crucially, the Rift's dynamic environment extends into deep human history. Evolutionary scientists have demonstrated through the pulsed climate variability hypothesis that intense oscillations between deep freshwater lakes and arid dust bowls in the Rift Valley drove rapid hominin brain expansion and forced early human species to adapt and migrate. As climate researcher Mark Maslin observes, modern humans were born from climate change, driven by rapid switching from famine to feast in the Rift Valley. This northern basin represents the opposite extreme of the national landscape. In the central highlands, human survival relies on navigating a narrow, green agricultural belt. In the northern desert, survival requires adapting to an extreme chemical lake. Both systems are produced by the exact same subterranean fault line, yet political maps display them as uniform terrain. Standard political maps apply flat, uniform colors across international borders, implying that a nation is a stable surface where life can develop identically from edge to edge. Geological analysis refutes that assumption. Kenya is defined by structural contrasts. A nation whose modern energy grid extracts industrial power from an active plate boundary, whose primary agricultural output is compressed into a narrow volcanic highland zone, and whose northern territory sustains life on the edge of an alkaline desert lake. Borders are negotiated by governments. National policies change, and treaties are updated over time. But plate tectonics, crustal thickness, elevation microclimates, and water chemistry do not cast political votes. The East African Rift continues its steady divergence, 6 to 7 millimeters every year, quietly dictating the physical rules for anyone building a future on top of it. Geography here is not passive scenery. It is legislation written in rock. If you found this forensic breakdown of landscape and energy valuable, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Which country's map should we analyze next? Every comment helps guide our upcoming investigative documentaries.